There's something happening right now that affects every single person watching this, and most of us don't even realize it. We scroll through our phones, go to work, pay our bills, and underneath it all, there's a force reshaping everything, from the price of your groceries to whether you can afford a home. That force? Greed, not the kind you see in movies with villains in suits, the kind that's woven so deeply into our systems that it feels normal. We all know greed exists. We complain about it. We post about it. But we rarely understand how it actually works, the specific ways that human desire turns into global destruction. So that's what we're going to do today. Not point fingers, not moralize, just understand, piece by piece, how this invisible force is reshaping our world. Chapter 1. Your brain on wanting more. Greed isn't just a choice, it's actually built into how your brain works. When you acquire something, money, status, possessions, your brain gives you a hit of satisfaction. The same feeling you get when you eat something delicious or scroll through social media for 3 hours when you meant to check one notification. But here's the cruel trick. That satisfaction fades quickly. You get what you wanted, feel good for a moment, then need more just to feel the same. It's like running on a treadmill where someone keeps increasing the speed. You're not getting anywhere, but you can't stop running. People with strong, greedy tendencies actually have differences in how their brains handle long-term thinking and impulse control. The part that says, maybe I don't need this, works less effectively. So, when someone asks, how much is enough? The greedy mind genuinely doesn't have a good answer. It's not stupidity, it's how they're wired. Chapter 2. The Comparison Trap. Now add something else. We don't exist in isolation. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others. You get a raise. Feels amazing. For about 12 seconds, then you find out your colleague got a bigger one. Suddenly that raise feels like an insult. This is status anxiety. And here's what makes it so difficult in the modern world. We used to compare ourselves to our neighbors, our village, maybe 50 people. Now, we're comparing ourselves to billions of people every day. Curated highlight reels of the most successful, beautiful, wealthy humans on the planet, served directly to our pockets. It's funny in a sad way. We have more than any generation in human history, and yet we feel more deprived. Because deprivation isn't about what you have, it's about what others have that you don't. Chapter 3. When greed goes corporate. Now, individual greed is one thing, but when greed gets institutionalized, when it becomes the operating system of corporations, that's when it becomes far more destructive. Let me give you some numbers that might feel impossible. In the United States, worker productivity has increased over 60% since the 1970s. Workers are producing more value than ever. But wages? Essentially flat when adjusted for inflation. All that extra value, trillions of dollars, went somewhere else. Where did it go? Stock buybacks. Corporations have spent over $5 trillion buying back their own stock. Money that could have gone to workers but instead was used to inflate share prices and executive bonuses. CEO compensation has grown to 900 times the median worker wage. Not 9 times. Not 90. 900. That's not a difference in skill or value. That's extraction. Chapter 4. The Healthcare Heist. Want to see greed in its purest form? Look at healthcare. Life-saving medications that cost a few dollars to manufacture get marked up by 400, 500, sometimes 1,000%. Not because they became more expensive to make, not because they improved, simply because companies realized they could charge more and people would have to pay. Because the alternative was suffering. Or worse. Families sit around kitchen tables making impossible calculations. Do we pay for the medication or the electricity bill? Do we cut the pills in half to make them last longer? Do we skip doses and hope for the best? There's a term for this. Rent-seeking. It means extracting wealth without creating any new value. You're not making better products. You're not innovating. You're just positioning yourself as a toll booth that people have to pass through. Hospital bills arrive with line items that seem invented. Hundreds of dollars for a single aspirin, thousands for an hour in a room. The same procedure costs 10 times more at one facility than another, with no explanation and no logic. And when that toll booth is between sick people and getting better, that's not business. That's exploitation of vulnerability. Chapter 5. The Attention Harvest. Now let's talk about something you're using right now. Technology. There's a phrase in Silicon Valley. If you're not paying for the product, you are the product. But even that understates it. You're not the product. You're the raw material being harvested. Here's how it works. Every click, every scroll, every pause on an image, it's all being collected, analyzed, and used to predict your behavior. That behavioral data is then sold to advertisers who want to influence what you buy, think, and do. But here's what makes it troubling. The algorithms aren't designed to show you what's good for you. They're designed to maximize engagement. And what maximizes engagement? Outrage, fear, anxiety. Content that triggers your emotional responses and keeps you scrolling. We talk about social media addiction like it's a personal failing, but these platforms were designed to be addictive by some of the smartest engineers in the world, using knowledge about human vulnerability and compulsion for profit. Appreciate you sticking around. If you liked what you heard, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment. I'd love to hear your take. And if you know someone who'd enjoy this, share it with them. Chapter 6. The Planet's Price Tag. Now let's zoom out, because greed doesn't just affect bank accounts. It's reshaping the physical planet. The Amazon rainforest has lost 17% of its area, not to feed people, not because we needed the land, but because short-term profit from logging and cattle ranching was more valuable than the lungs of our planet. The fashion industry, just clothes, consumes 215 trillion liters of water annually, and every second, a garbage truck worth of textiles gets sent to landfills because it's cheaper to throw things away than to make them last. There's a concept called planned obsolescence. Products are intentionally designed to break or become outdated, so you have to buy new ones. Your phone could last 10 years, but then they'd only sell you one phone. So they engineer failure into the product. And the climate situation? Fossil fuel companies knew about their impact decades ago. Internal documents prove it. But they funded denial, lobbied against regulations, and suppressed information because quarterly profits mattered more than what happens to future generations. Chapter 7. The Inequality Engine. Let me give you a number that should be impossible to comprehend. The 26 richest people on Earth own as much wealth as the poorest 3.9 billion people combined. 26 people, 3.9 billion. That's not a wealth gap. That's a wealth canyon. And here's what makes it worse. Billionaire wealth grows at about 8% annually, double the rate of overall economic growth. The gap isn't closing, it's accelerating. We'll likely have our first trillionaire within a decade. Meanwhile, the housing speculation situation prices ordinary people out of homes. Investment firms buy up neighborhoods and raise rents. Healthcare debt forces families to choose between medication and food. This level of inequality doesn't just hurt individuals. It erodes how society functions. When wealth concentrates, so does influence. And when the people making decisions spend most of their time fundraising, the people writing the biggest checks get the loudest voice. Chapter 8. History's Warning. Now you might think this is a modern problem, but greed has been collapsing civilizations for thousands of years, and the patterns are remarkably consistent. The Roman Empire, the largest and most powerful civilization of its time, didn't fall to external enemies. It rotted from within, corruption among leaders, wealth extraction from citizens, the gradual prioritization of personal gain over public good. The Byzantine Empire, the Mughal Empire, the Soviet Union, different cultures, different centuries, but the same pattern. When the gatekeepers become corrupt, when elites extract wealth rather than create it, the entire system weakens. There's a concept called the Praetorian Guard problem. In Rome, the Praetorian Guard was supposed to protect the emperor, But eventually they started selling the position to the highest bidder. The protectors became the threat. Look around at modern regulatory agencies. Look at the movement between corporations and oversight positions, and ask yourself, who are the Praetorian Guards now? Chapter 9. The Abundance Paradox. Here's something that seems backward, but is absolutely critical to understand. Abundance doesn't cure greed. It often makes it worse. We like to think that if people just had enough, they'd stop wanting more. But the opposite tends to happen. The more resources someone has, the more they tend to want, the more they feel entitled to. Wealth actually tends to reduce empathy. It increases feelings of entitlement. It makes people more likely to believe they deserve what they have and that others deserve their struggles. This is why abundance mindset advice can feel so hollow. Telling someone struggling to pay rent to think abundantly misses the point entirely. The problem isn't their mindset. It's a system where abundance flows upward and scarcity flows down. Look at billionaires pursuing life extension, spending fortunes trying to live forever while millions lack basic health care. That's the ultimate expression of greed. Not content with having more than anyone could spend in 1,000 lifetimes, they want infinite lifetimes to spend it. Chapter 10. Ancient Wisdom, Modern Relevance. Every major tradition of thought has identified greed as a fundamental problem, not because they were against progress, but because they understood something about human nature that we keep forgetting. Buddhism has a sophisticated understanding of what they call craving, the endless wanting that creates suffering. Not because wanting is inherently bad, but because mistaking acquisition for fulfillment is a trap that never closes. Aristotle talked about the golden mean, the idea that living well exists between extremes. Not poverty, but not excess either. Enough to thrive without becoming enslaved to accumulation. Thomas Aquinas pointed out something crucial. Greed isn't just about accumulating. It's about how accumulation by some creates scarcity for others, extraction that harms both the hoarder and the community. These aren't dusty old ideas. They're observations that have been accurate for thousands of years. We just keep thinking we're the exception. So where does this leave us? Understanding the problem is essential, but it's not enough. The good news? We have historical evidence of what works. Progressive taxation during the mid-20th century correlated with the greatest expansion of the middle class in American history. Worker organization reduced inequality significantly. Public investment in education, healthcare, and infrastructure created shared prosperity. A modest global wealth tax could generate $1.7 trillion, enough to lift billions out of poverty while barely affecting the lifestyles of those taxed. But systems change requires something that can't be legislated. A shift in what we value, what we celebrate, what we teach our children success looks like. Every empire that fell to greed had people who saw it happening, who warned about it. The question isn't whether we can see the problem, it's whether we'll do anything about it. Because greed is destroying the world, slowly, systematically, often invisibly, but it's not inevitable, it's a choice, made by individuals, institutions, and societies, and choices can change. The question is, what choice will you make?